Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, April 18th meeting of the Transportation Committee. And I'd like to call this a meeting to order. We have three of our members here this evening, and as well as many staff from in the town. So would appreciate the board here taking a look at your approval of the minutes from February 21st. If anybody has any additions, deletions, corrections. Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, and I want to thank Linda again. Wonderful job with the minutes. Thank you. Next item on our agenda here is a committee discussion, and first on the list here is the Penfield Presbyterian Church, and I believe, Mark, that they're looking at a child at play sign request and a directional sign request at Whalen Road and Jackson Road intersection.
So we received a letter from one of the members of the church, Doug Fox. So you may know Doug, former director of planning here at Penfield. He's a member of the church and submitted a letter on behalf of the church to this group looking for first some signage off of Whalen Road and Jackson Road extension. I guess there used to be one on Jackson Road extension that has since gone away, asking for one off Whalen Road to direct people back, in or up Old Jackson, I call it, back to where the church is. So that was their first request. Second request was child at play signs. They do have a daycare that runs out of their facility, letting people know, especially kind of approaching the curve, that there are children, within that area. So in talking with Eric, I believe the first two signs would fall under the purview of the County of Monroe. So it would be a recommendation from this group to pass that on to the county DOT, as the county has jurisdiction over those two portions of the road. So that recommendation or that install of those signs, I believe, should come from them. But since it was all in the one letter, figured we could discuss it amongst this group first. So if the group's okay with that, we can pass that portion on to the county DOT and then them take a look at that and then discuss the merits of whether those make sense or not. Any concerns with passing it on to the county?
Currently, the one is still there at Jackson Road Extension, correct?
I believe he only requested the one for Jackson Road and Whalen.
Correct, but there's an existing one on Jackson Extension, right?
I thought he said that one had gone away or got hit by a snowplow or something, but if it
looked to be on Google Maps, and if you go back in old Google Maps, there is one shown on Jackson and Whalen, and it's gone now. Do we know where that went? Did the street sign get replaced? And
so both of those locations would have fallen under the county's jurisdiction, being county intersections. I don't know if those signs were replaced. If they were ultimately replaced by the county, but the wayfinding signs not reinstalled. I guess that could be our initial request. Looking back,
right.
It appears the signs had been installed prior. We've had a request to have them reinstalled if they were taken down. Is there a reason why they were taken down and can't be put up, or if so, could they be reinstalled?
So is there an ordinance on file for those previous installations?
Would have to go back and look. I mean, I know we track where stop signs are located, other signs. I don't know as we track individual wayfinding signs.
Because if there was, then that would already be an approval on file and then just put it back up, right?
Yeah. I'd have to look and do some research and see if that was in there. I think the other one never existed off of Whalen and Jackson. That sounded like a new request.
No, that was there.
That was there too?
Yeah, if you go back in Google Maps, you can pull down to 10 years ago. Yeah, right there. You just had it.
Jackson and Jackson extension?
Jackson and Whalen.
Mm-hmm. Here?
Yep. If you go street view and then go back to the see more dates and go back 10 years, it's there. To 2012.
That's where we are.
Yep, there you go.
Okay.
But you can see the street name sign in Jackson is a different, it's a different sign, different font.
Yes, it was when
So
they
whether
redid
that
it.
was removed at that time when those were updated. I know they're going with the
The larger.
larger
right?
first letter,
I think that's-
lowercase, second letters that was deemed more readable.
Not sure what the other panel was.
And it's awfully
other
faded
side,
if it
yeah.
was.
Maybe it's a
Got their money's worth on that one.
Would we have those on file somewhere?
I say in our code, we do document stop signs, yield signs, that type
Yeah.
of stuff. I don't know where we
Where we
would have
find 'em.
documented,
Okay.
that approval. We can obviously do a quick search in our records for it, but
What year is that one that you had? There you go.
Oh, then, yeah, the extension next left.
Okay, that's what it was.
Which the backside would have been blank, looking at it, not just faded from
Yeah.
the other side.
Yeah, you're right, that's a blank site. So that year is 2019?
That's right.
yeah.
Oh, so it was there pretty current, recently. All right.
Okay. Well, we can do some research on our end, and then we can pull up this historical stuff and share it with the county, because it'll be on their intersection, so they make sure they're included in that conversation.
I wouldn't think they'd have an issue with us replacing.
I mean, if it had been there before and was removed for whatever reason, came down, guess we can check why.
Okay.
Was it stolen?
I say, I don't know.
Wouldn't be the first sign
I
stolen.
say we have other signs at town that disappear at time to time, so.
It's good scrap, as you know.
So should we hold that till?
I think if this group is supportive of it, I think that's the end of, this group. It's up to the county. Once we show, they were there, historically they were there, we can pass that on to the county,
Okay.
and I assume the county would replace it, so.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine in then. Okay.
So then the second item, that would be more before this group, is that request for the Children at Play sign. That would be up on the curve. Sorry, it's going up in this area here on that. So as we're coming around the curve, approaching the church, is that warranted, or would you look more to have a Children at Play coming off of, Jackson on the side street? I know this is one we've kind of talked about
Yeah.
and look at, is there a change between being more of a rural road or a connector road and then coming into a neighborhood, or a change in appearance of what the neighborhood is kind of where we've looked at it in the past.
So the reason they want the Children at Play sign is just so that when people are picking their children up?
I think just as people are coming down the road around the curve, they're aware that they have summer camps, they have, daycare, they've got I think they have a school as part of it, so they've got, many different opportunities that there's, children at the church.
And they'd want one Children at Play sign right at the,
I would assume they'd look for it on both directions.
Eric, have we done those at some other churches? And
Not that I'm aware of that have specifically been put in place in front of churches. My personal opinion, I think it'd be more appropriate to have it kind of closer to either intersection at Jackson Road and at Wayland, as you're coming off of a county road, just because of the difference in speed limit, volume of traffic. I think that would be more appropriate if they were even to be considered.
They specifically mentioned about 51 kids are there. Was
they
that
did.
at a certain events? Is that what they were saying?
I think that's their childcare. They have a
they do.
daycare.
A
they have a
daycare center there.
daycare,
They
so-
do have
Year
daycare.
round.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And then I know they do have summer camps and different things with the church, that kids are there in the summertime as well.
But I guess that was my question too when I noticed that, but their playground isn't anywhere near where,
I think for their daycare, sometimes they use that southern parking lot, is my understanding.
Yeah.
okay.
And I think they put cones out and that kind of thing, but I do think sometimes they're in the parking lot.
Okay, I didn't know that.
This is the
Yeah,
front lawn area.
Yeah, behind the building, it gets wooded pretty quickly, so they don't really have a rear backyard. I know they've used that north parking lot in the past, whether they've moved away from that now that the group home is back there. Maybe they try to limit, utilization of that parking lot since there is other traffic coming and going.
Dan, any opinions?
No, I agree with Eric.
Post the signs closer to the intersections off
Yeah.
of Jackson and Whalen.
Yeah, I mean,
Sister-
there's a lot of activity at that church, and the Boy Scouts have their troop there. It's a pretty large troop.
Yep, it is.
And if we put them closer to the intersections, they kind of act for the whole neighborhood as well as the church, not just isolated at the church itself.
Yeah, and it kind of addresses some of the other complaints that we've had on that same stretch of roadway.
Yep, the cut through and so forth, yeah. And there has been a lot of new development on Jackson Road in the last
Yes.
year.
Yeah, the Stafford Park homes are all new.
If everyone's in favor,
I'll go with their, that's fine.
any other discussion or questions? Everybody would vote to approve?
Well, I guess the action that this group would take would be to make the actual recommendation to the town board
Right.
to install those signs.
Right,
Which,
excellent.
that would be discussed at the next work session.
Everyone in agreement?
Yep.
That's
Okay.
fine with me.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Then we'll move for, Mark will prepare
We'll put it on the work session.
Put it on the work
for
session
discussion.
agenda, rather.
Yep.
Sure, for the next meeting. It won't be until the May meeting, May
Yep.
work session. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the Garden Hill Lane and Christine Circle, Tall Castle Lane signage discussion. Eric?
Thank you. So I actually received a phone call just a few days ago from a resident over on Christine Circle prior to, the recent development on Tall Castle Lane. It used to be you turned off of Shoecraft onto Garden Hill Lane and then left back to Christine Circle. Now that Tall Castle has gone in, there is somewhat of a three-way intersection. Now with, I believe there's 8 houses on Christine's Circle, and then I believe 6 on Tall Castle Lane. There is no current signage at that intersection. I know we were looking back at the plans to see if there was anything proposed to be installed that the developer just hadn't done yet, which I think, Sarah was able to take a look, and there was nothing proposed on that. Somewhat of a kind of a wait and see, if there was a need for any type of signage at that intersection. Ultimately, the request was just to be able to take a look and see what, I guess, if this group had any recommendations for, signage at that intersection, whether it was a yield sign, whether it was stop signs, to help control the traffic. It seems like the majority of the problems are cars that are either coming, out of Christine Circle or off of Tall Castle Lane that are making the turn, and then along the straightaway on Garden Hill Lane as cars are turning off of Shoecraft onto Garden Hill Lane, kind of coming head-on toward one another on that short stretch.
I think the confusion's been Christine Circle, it's all been kind of one road. So Garden Hill Lane, you turn Garden Hill, the only option was to go, other than the one driveway, was to go left before. So I think people have always just looked at it as a one continuous road, so there was no need to stop, look either way, put a turn signal on. You're not
Right.
making a left, you're just going around the bend. Now you're adding in a new element. So I think the people that have always lived on Christine Circle feel like they're on the flow-through path, and the new people are the side road access, and the new people are coming in going, well, it's just a curve, it's not really, we're not coming in at a full
Right.
90, so I think there's just confusion based on historically, it's just you've come in and always gone left, there was no stop,
Nowhere
turn,
to
look
go,
both
yeah.
ways, and now
Right.
the other people are adding into that, so I think it's just added some confusion in there. It's a small neighborhood, but I think just since the new street is 30 years or more after the original street was in there. It kind of creates a new traffic element that never was there before.
The request was more of a stop sign versus a yield sign, or either or?
It was just a review of the overall intersection. I think the resident in particular actually lives on, down in the cul-de-sac on Christine Circle, so I think their preference would be that they can continue making that turn without
Right.
having to stop. If it were to be a single stop sign, to have that on Tall Tree as you approach Garden Hill Lane. I could also understand the residents on Tall Tree looking just the opposite.
Yeah, right, right.
I think the best way to do it would really, for consistency, would be to make it a three-way stop. But I also understand that's a lot of stop signs to put up for 15 houses.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many houses are, yeah.
What is the safety issue here?
I think it was just the concern about cars, the fact that there is no signage, cars coming, as cars are coming, trying to come into the neighborhood, as well as cars leaving, that no one's stopping at the, kind of that main internal intersection. And
There's been some
whether
near
taking
misses.
the turn too wide, not driving in their own lane, having a head-on collision on that short stretch of Garden Hill Lane.
But there's been no study to substantiate any of that, right? I mean, it's just a perception issue?
I mean, we can look at it further. Obviously, we don't need to make a decision tonight. It just came in, but this is kind of the initial piece. I mean, they're still building homes on, was it Tall Castle, or
Yeah.
homes are still under construction there, so that's not complete or done at this point. We could put traffic counters out. We can do some other, background data, but there's only a couple of homes we can look at, the accident data, see if there are truly accidents, but this Tall Castle's, I don't know when we issued a first C of O, but it's got to be pretty recently.
Last year or two.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's maybe only a year that anybody's lived on Tall Castle.
I wouldn't jump into a three-way stop or any stop signs in that until you have something to support that.
And I agree with that, too. I think, one, it's like you said, it's a small community, and going the stop sign seems the extreme to me. So studying it, it may need stop signs at some point, but I don't know about right now at this point.
We get these requests for far worse situations than this.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we don't want to start a precedent here with just popping them up. I think you have to have some study behind it. But I'm not sure, I mean, I don't know if you have enough, I mean, there's not enough homes there yet to even really.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
At this point, I just recommend tabling it, and we'll see as it continues to develop if a need develops. But right now, I don't.
No, that's fine.
I
I'd
don't
say
see
Eric
much.
just took the call
Yeah,
in.
it came in, I think, yesterday morning, as we were putting together yesterday morning or Friday morning as we were putting together the agenda. So kind of fairly recent, just looking to know if there were signage that was proposed that just hasn't been installed at this point, or if there was anything already in the works or anything that could or should be.
Yeah, it's not a cut through to anything. It's
Well, it's a pretty small, self-contained neighborhood. I think everybody's just kind of got to figure out that there's residents that live on the other
Yes,
end now, and then
yeah.
everybody's kind of got to.
I'm wondering if they're seeing a lot of trucks. They're probably seeing a lot of building trucks going through there. That maybe is what
Could be.
the neighbors are
That's
seeing.
part of it, a lot of construction.
Construction vehicles. So everyone's in agreement that we table this? And then Eric, you'll reach back out to the resident and let them know that taking this, we'll discuss it at a later
I'll monitor it as development.
monitor, yeah.
Continues, but
Fair enough. Good for that? Okay. Next on the agenda here is the Route 250 corridor project updates from Mark.
So just wanted to update this group, obviously with the Arbors development. If anybody's been by Atlantic 250 Penfield Center Road recently, you can see the large development that's going on, which is the Arbors. So as Amy's pulling up, that's kind of the northwest corner of Atlantic 250. So as part of that development as well as the 250 corridor. That all falls under the state of New York, so it's their roadway. But we've been working with them and hired Barton LaJudas as our consultant to look at that whole corridor as a whole comprehensive approach. So as we see more developments go in, the planning board approved the arbors that's going in now. They approved Penfield Heights across from the YMCA. There's a spot there. They haven't started development yet. And then there's another one just north of the existing, you got the YMCA, what's the, Penfield Square.
Penfield Square. Mhm.
North of Penfield Square, we've had a couple of different applications for that. So as we've been looking at that whole corridor, want to make sure that all these projects kind of tie in together. As we look at the possibility of center turn lanes, as we look at capacity of intersections, they've identified with all of them some improvement to the road, turn lane, other stuff as part of their development, but we want to make sure we're looking at it comprehensively across the corridor and not just piecemeal for each one. And the state's been very willing to work with us on that. So we've met with them, been working with Barton LaJudas. So they've come up with some initial analysis of, I'll say worst case scenario, but full build out what that could look like. And then so they've done traffic counts along the corridor, different intersections going all the way from Whalen all the way up to Plank Road. So we looked at the different intersections, the neighborhoods on either side, Sweets Corners, Atlantic, then Penfield Center, and Amy's zooming up. Then you've got Northrop further up, and then all the way up to Plank. So looking at signal timing, looking at turn lanes, looking at center turns, what's needed to kind of, help that corridor. In one of the areas that everyone acknowledges in their traffic study but hasn't put anything forth is the Whalen 250 intersections. That's the one we're kind of worried about the most, is how is that going to function in all of this. So we're looking at creating potentially a transportation district or something along this corridor, so as development comes in, they either contribute to the improvement or they pay some amount of money into a fund so that, if and when time comes, we need to do improvements to that intersection, again, we can work with the state to make those betterments. So just wanted to share with this group that we are proactively looking at that. The state's been a good partner in proactively looking at thus far, and how kind of all of this development goes along. Once the homes are in, we're starting to see the traffic, make sure that there's a cohesive plan to that. So as that rolls out, I'll share that plan with the group. And right now it's just kind of an early draft, but here is kind of what they're looking at, and share it with this group to keep you guys informed and get your feedback on that as well.
Nice, great. Appreciate that, Mark.
Any
Overview.
questions on that portion of it? I had one more piece to share.
So the idea is there that each developer, obviously, as Dan knows, they have to put their own improvements in to meet the traffic of their, but also then contribute money towards greater improvements later down the road.
Yep.
So you don't end up with this hourglass type thing.
Yep. Just knowing that each one's going to do theirs, and then they put their little taper length in, the other one does theirs and their taper
Right.
length, and they never quite blend
Yeah, tie it
together.
all together.
Or, everybody's acknowledging there's going to be impacts to the Whalen Road intersection, but obviously no one is looking to solve that on their own or
Right.
contribute to it. So we're looking that, they do their piece, but then if we have an overall plan for that road, each developer can kind of knows what their piece is, and the state's already looked at it and had an idea of what it is. So hopefully we can, kind of build to that overall plan that's in place ahead of time, and then if they need to contribute, then they can contribute to that Whalen Road intersection, and, it's not left at the end, either the last developer pays for all of it, or we wait till it blows up and then, point fingers on who or what should have happened.
Yeah, those transportation districts are tricky in that, the last person in, and it's a conglomeration of several developers, and then if you don't have enough, and what if you got too much, and what if you never need it, and on and on it goes, and then by the time it comes around, they've forgotten where it started
Yeah.
and where it ended up. They're
Yeah, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but
They're
at least we're
legal.
trying to,
give the attorney something to work on.
we got our attorney working on it, and obviously if we do create a transportation district, that's got to go through the state, and it's got to have legislation for that. Right now, we're just kind of looking at what those overall improvements are, kind of what the size, scope of those are, dollars, and then to, start to kind of look at how do we tackle that and then divvy that up and then make sure at least every developer is paying their share. other parts of development aren't that big, and they'll never trip the warrants to add a turn lane or anything else. So those are the ones, the smaller ones, that may actually end up paying into the fund more than the bigger developers are putting in turn lanes. They are doing signal timing changes, adding turn arrows, other stuff to it. The smaller ones will never trip anything and therefore never contribute anything, but obviously they're going to be adding, to the traffic on that corridor.
How does B&L's work compare to the master plan for this corridor?
They're looking at more of a future full build-out of what our traffic is. So we did an analysis, way back, basically from almost a Victor all the way up to Webster, kind of an analysis of the corridor. That was kind of pre-us getting into mixed use, and it looked at the intersection of 250 and Atlantic was the least developed of anything along that corridor, which is kind of what started the thought of the mixed use. Now that we're doing that, they're looking at, okay, if everything comes in at full build-out, full development, what would that impact be? How do those intersections function? So they're kind of doing some speculation on, what it would be 5, 10, 20 years down the road, and then looking at, do we need to add, additional through lanes at intersections, turn lanes, stuff of that. So it's kind of more of a future analysis.
Yeah, I agree with Tim. I think you have to be careful with the district and make sure that there's steps built into it. When we meet these benchmarks, this is what should occur.
And we've got that already with the arbors. So the state has kind of put them on every 200 building permits that are issued, kind of stop, reanalyze the traffic, and then implement, the items that were in that. So they've kind of got them on a program. So every 200 units that are in, do a recheck, do an analysis, and then, okay, now's the time before phase 2 kicks in, to put that center turn lane in, to do those, intersection modifications. So
Yeah, I think it's a good approach. Otherwise, the last developer gets stuck with the whole bill.
and then it's unaffordable, and then nobody will do anything.
Right.
So that
No,
one lot
it's
is just
just-
burdened with everything. It'll sit forever because no one can afford to do what's done. Meanwhile, the traffic's all there, the impacts are there.
It's a good approach, but as Tim said, got to get the language right.
Well, it's hard because there's a certain part of that either the state or the county or someone, just normal growth has to take into account as part of their capital planning. It's not all these few people, right?
Yeah, and you can't hang it just on the developers. It's part of the overall, but
And they'll push back on that pretty hard, as they should. I
Yep.
mean, but how those two come together and what's the right split, you could probably analyze that from now till forever and never get it right. Got to agree what's fair and move on,
Yeah.
if that's possible. But, yep, agreed.
okay.
Okay.
So that was just kind of more informational. As we come further along with that plan, we'll share it with this group and collect additional feedback. The other item I wanted to share is that we recently moved ahead with a town-wide traffic study. So looking at all intersections in the town, again, to the future is where do we have accidents? Is there any issues in certain areas? So again, we're working with Barton LaJudas on that to look at, accidents, look at areas we see additional development. The 250 corridor is kind of well analyzed. I think with the future school bus garage coming in, the Jackson-Plank intersection probably should be looked at is once that comes online. I know the county's looking at that now, with how many curb cuts they're allowing onto Jackson Road, what's going on to Plank Road. But they're going to do an analysis across the town and kind of look at the accident data, see if there are intersections we have accident issues at, and then if there's any, mitigating efforts that, we should look at county, state as well.
That's going to get into be a very busy corner over there with with a bus garage and then with the new homes. Or it used to be very quiet over there. So, thank you.
I mean, as Tim said, the town's going to continue to grow and continue to expand, and so just as we kind of go along, just to kind of take checks of these things and analysis and kind of data points of where we are, and then as development continues, just to make sure we're kind of taking a proactive approach to analyzing our roads.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. We have no held items this evening. Any new business? I'm not seeing any new business. Our next meeting will be, of the Transportation Committee, will be May 16th, right here at 5 p.m. With that, if there's nothing else, I will adjourn this meeting. I will thank staff as well as the committee members, and I'd like to thank PCTV. Dave, the entire crew is down there, Dave and Brian and Tyler, Amy, and our newest member, Wellesley. Welcome to PCTV. So thank you all, and have a very nice evening, and see you next month.